In one of its cover stories over the last year, the international news magazine Newsweek declared that Pakistan was the most dangerous country on earth. Asha Amir Ali from The Big Digit went to talk to Ron Morrow, the writer of this particular story, and figure out his methodology and exactly how he qualifies this ranking.
Most of the terrorist plots that have been uncovered, whether it's in Europe or in other parts of the world, are always traced back to Pakistan, and generally the initial planning took place in the tribal area.
But there's an argument to be made that a country like the United States, for instance, which has invaded more than 130 countries over the last century in various different times and for various different reasons, that is actually the United States exerts more influence over world affairs in a negative sense. Right? There's always fear of the United States jumping in somewhere.
Well, indeed. I mean, we could be bombing Iran tomorrow for all I know. But I think in the context that we're talking about, Pakistan is a very, very dangerous place.
Do you think the United States is a dangerous country?
Well, I think it has. The invasion of Iraq was certainly unnecessary, and it's caused the United States grievously in terms of the loss of life and in terms of the expense of our own financial capital. And so that was a major mistake. And so let's hope that another one of these preemptive wars doesn't happen anytime soon.
Yeah. No, I guess I'm just trying to get to the fact that I think that it's quite possible that the rest of the world conceives of the United States as a very dangerous country. But moving on, do you think Pakistanis agree with you that Pakistan is the most dangerous country in the world?
Well, I think one of the problems is that Pakistanis are largely in denial about what's going on. I mean, I think President Musharraf deserves a lot of the blame for what's happened, because he indeed has, I think, consciously kept the country in a state of crisis ever since 2001, just to keep American interest and American support.
And this is something that you bring up in your story, where you lay the blame very squarely on the shoulders of Pakistani leaders, and you say that they created the Islamic monster. And you're talking about Zia al-Haq's regime. How implicated do you think the United States has been in the creation of this Islamic monster?
Well, I think we tried to bring out the fact that the tribal area was certainly, and perhaps not enough in this report, but in other reports, how the tribal area was used as a springboard for the Mujahideen's effort to get the Soviets out of Afghanistan. And of course, we spent billions of dollars in informing the Mujahideen, and at one point, as everybody knows, Osama bin Laden was a terrific ally of ours, and we used the Arab brigades, and we hoped that they would dislodge the Soviets from Afghanistan, which they did. And then we totally washed our hands of the whole thing and walked away. And then, of course, Pakistan, in a way what Musharraf says is true, then Pakistan was kind of left holding the bag.
Ron, one last question. I want to ask you how you define terrorism.
Well, that's a really difficult question. I really don't think I can. As a journalist, I don't try to use the word terrorism very often, and I try to stay away from it, because terrorism is not a person, terrorism is not a thing. Terrorism is a tactic that's used by groups to bring about some kind of end.
Can a state perpetuate terrorism?
In a state, of course, there's state terrorism, of course.
There's state terrorism.
Right. And I suppose, I mean, if you wanted to extend it, a B-52 over Afghanistan is state terrorism.
Right, especially when it kills women and children. That's state terrorism, isn't it?
Right, sure.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much, Ron.
Okay, my pleasure. Yeah,
Arguably, one of the biggest domestic crises of the last 12 months has been the wheat crisis in Pakistan. Very few people would deny that. But what's ironic is that the government of Pakistan had registered a record 23.5 million ton wheat crop in the preceding year. And one would ask, why the crisis? We put this question to the late Dr. A.R. Kamal when he came to our studio and try and make sense of this all.
You see, when the prices in the world market are very high, then any person who has wheat with itself would like to export.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you do not allow export, then that means it has to be sold within the domestic market and prices should fall.
The government, you mean when the government does not allow exports?
Exports, then that has to be sold within the market.
Right.
They hoarded it. And when they came to know that it is not going to be opened, then they smuggled. And if at that time the government was more vigilant and did not allow the smuggling, then things would have been different.
In your honest opinion, was the government being naive?
I don't know. Because you see, they could be naive, they could be smart as well. Because
Smart? What do you mean?
Yeah, because if there were certain elements in the government who were making money by smuggling,
really?
Then I don't know, but they could be.
No, but
we don't know, because who knows that who is smuggling? You don't know.
If such a great amount of something is being smuggled outside of the country and by land, it's not that difficult for the government to keep track, especially when they're anticipating something like that. Now, obviously, the government has its economic advisors. They must have told the government that, listen, something like this is likely to happen.
But
somebody must have benefited. Who made money?
Yeah, but do we
Who
know?
made money?
But do we know any person? Has government suggested any name that is the person who has smuggled it? You see, there are 14 agencies in Pakistan for checking smuggling.
14
agencies. And now we have the 15th one. We have said that, okay, all these rangers, they are going to look after.
Because 14 institutions have failed to check it, obviously.
It seems so, yeah.
We're seeing it.
Yeah. So, it's not that there are not agencies who are to check smuggling. There are. But probably they are not doing the work which they were supposed to do. This is the lobby. You look at, both opposition and governments at any time, and you will see how many persons are the sugar mill owners.
Aha. Interesting point there. And it happened about a year ago.
It happened a year ago. It happened before.
A very prominent minister was one of the linchpins of the sugar industry.
Absolutely.
I see. We've still got more from the best of Season 2 and 3 of The Big Digit coming up right after this break. So stay tuned.